Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and today I am back with a first impressions video of a brand new addition to Game Pass on Xbox and PC. It is called Retro Classics. Now, maybe I wasn't paying attention, but I feel like this kind of came out of nowhere today. I was actually notified of this from a fan of my channel, and he's like, dude, you might want to check this out, because it seems right up my alley, and he was right. So I jumped on my Xbox Series X, went into Game Pass, and sure enough, there is Retro Classics ready to download. And so that's exactly what I did today, is I downloaded it and spent a couple hours messing around with this. So what is it? Well, basically Microsoft teamed up with Antstream, which is pretty popular streaming retro gaming service out there that's been around for a couple years now. A lot of people really enjoy it. It's got a massive library of games to play, and so they teamed up with Microsoft and Xbox to bring their version of it over to Game Pass. And when I first fired this up, I was kind of shocked because I didn't know what to expect. And I was like, wow, they've got a mix of Atari 2600 games in here, as well as PC MS-DOS games, Amiga. They had all this stuff. I was like, what's going on here? Well, after I dug into it, okay, my expectations tempered a little bit because it's mostly, stuff from Activision, and because Activision owns, some random properties both on the Atari 2600 but also MS-DOS. For instance, they own games from my old company, the place I used to work, Sierra Online. But that was surprising to see listed here. I was like, what? They're going to include some classic PC and Amiga games, so that was kind of interesting. But as I dug into it, I was like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing here. So right now, as of today, there are 61 games included in here. And like I said, almost all of these are from Activision, and the vast majority of them are from the Atari 2600. Now, that's necessarily a bad thing. As a matter of fact, they ended up making most of the really good Atari 2600 games. However, I just want to set your expectations here because I know, a certain generation, Atari games are a little bit too old. But there is definitely some variety here. So let's go ahead and jump into the interface, though. At the top there, you have Play Now. And so if you click on that, essentially it gives you kind of featured games that you can check out. There's also newly added games as well as games that are currently trending. But the next tab over is really fun because that's where the challenges are. And I tried a couple of these. And so these are challenges that you're going to be competing either solo, or you can do co-op with some of these, and basically, online leaderboards. You have Xbox achievements, which is really fun. It's fun to play some of these old games and unlock some achievements. And then the next tab over is collectibles. And so this is kind of like the classic Activision patches that you would get back in the 1980s. Some of these you can unlock with gems that you acquire. You see that up in the upper right there. And some of these collectibles will activate achievements. There you have notifications, and here's where the game will tell you if someone beats your score, which I was kind of annoyed to see that someone beat my hero score, but that's all right. It's only the first day. So, and then you have all games. That's where you can sort the games and dig through them and kind of see exactly what's included here. So as of today, there are 61 games right here, and you can sort them by different formats. And then also notice down there, it shows and lists Antstream. So if you happen to have Antstream installed on your Xbox and you've joined that service, I guess that's where eventually you'll be able to launch that. This didn't launch for me, even though I do have Antstream installed, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. I can launch Antstream by itself, but I couldn't launch it from here. Not entirely sure what's going on, but I'm sure at some point it's going to be integrated probably better. So that's enough of the interface. Let's go ahead and check out some games. And of course, I got to try my favorite game on the 2600, that is Hero. And launching this, again, it was pretty interesting. So first of all, there's a surprisingly long wait for the loading to happen. You see it kind of going there. Not entirely sure why, because it's actually quicker on the Antstream app than it is here. It's not super long, but I kind of noticed that it did take, several seconds to do. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. I don't know if it's trying to download the game to the console, or maybe it's trying to kick off the streaming from a server, which I believe is how Antstream actually works, right? So it's not running on your console, it's streaming over the internet. But either way, just know that there's a loading screen. And then jumping into a game here, it was interesting because, yeah, it's not exactly as snappy as playing on a real Atari 2600. I noticed that immediately. Also, it's a little odd using the Xbox thumbstick to control this game. Now, you can actually use the D-pad for kind of more precision, but I just want to let you know, from a hardcore Hero fan who has a real Atari, it's a little odd playing this on the Xbox. I actually didn't do quite as well as I would have liked. Typically, I can make it to probably level, 13, maybe 14, something like that, and I was barely able to get to level 9 on my first try here, so it's going to take some getting used to, but you do see that I did make it onto the leaderboards, which is cool. The next game I wanted to check out is Demon Attack, another one of my favorites from my childhood. And again, this plays just as I would expect. It actually looks pretty good. The one thing I did notice here, though, is that the Xbox reward notification came up in the middle of my game. That was kind of annoying because I couldn't see my little ship down there, And I guess this would only really matter if you're actually trying to go for a leaderboard high score, right? And I don't think it's going to be a problem all the time. It didn't come up any other time I was using this, but, just be aware that that could be one of the funky things, playing these older games on this Xbox. The next thing I checked out is River Raid, and I jumped into a challenge. And for this one, I need to basically just last as long as possible without crashing, which is pretty fun because, you just try to go as far as you possibly can here and not crash. You don't actually have to worry about points at all. And on my first attempt here, I did get a medal, and I got second place, which is pretty cool. I also jumped into a challenge with Pitfall 2. With this one here, kind of same thing. You're just basically trying to go as far as you can without losing any points. And that would be either hitting one of the, the deadly creatures that can hurt you, or, and I didn't realize this, or falling down a little bit. So in this game, you can actually fall, but you will take a little bit of damage and therefore lose points. And so that was pretty fun as well. And then I wanted to check out some PC games, right? And it's cool that they are including some old Sierra games in here. Although I did notice it's a random selection of kind of, I hate to say it, kind of like B titles, you know what I mean? There's no King's Quest or Leisure Suit Larry included in here. Instead, you get some of the little, I would say, slightly lesser known games like Freddy Farkas, Robin Hood, as well as Torrance Passage. Although that said, this might be a good opportunity for people to jump in and play a game maybe you're not as familiar with. So I immediately jumped into Space Quest 6. This was a game that was released when I was working at Sierra. It's actually a pretty fun one. If you haven't played Space Quest 6, it's really a sci-fi spoof game. So it spoofs all sorts of things like Star Wars, Star Trek, all these sort of things, Deep Space Nine, stuff like that. And it's interesting to play this with a Xbox controller. I did find that the cursor moves way too fast. It's almost too sensitive. But it's, it's not unplayable actually. And what's cool is, again, you can save at any time here. So you can play this game for a little bit and then come back and, pick it up right where you left off. The other game I checked out was Torrance Passage. This is an Al Lowe game. And again, it's one that not a lot of people have played or perhaps remember.
Boogle, can you be an axe?
And kind of the same thing here, where it is a little odd trying to control this game with the controller. It's not impossible, but I did find myself kind of overshooting sometime when I'm trying to select something on the screen. So that's a little bit odd. Also too, in both of these games, I did notice a bit of pixelation or kind of distortion from the game streaming from a server to my Xbox. Wasn't really that big of a deal. It was usually, super quick. I just kind of noticed sort of like a flicker or a, like I said, distortion on the screen, and then it would go away. But I think it's kind of interesting that they included computer games in this release. So that definitely is a cool thing. As a matter of fact, they've already announced that they're going to bring more Activision and even Blizzard titles to this service coming soon. They said that they anticipate the list of games to grow to over 100. And so it's going to be pretty cool to see what they bring to this service. Although I have to say that Antstream by itself actually has way more games. There's over 1,000. I think there's like 1,400 plus games in Antstream, and I think there's more variety, which I would love to see these kind of merge together. I'm hoping eventually that will happen because, Atari 2600 games are cool. I like them, but not everybody is going to be jazzed about it. And so I do think that there'd be a lot of, value in bringing both of those services maybe under the same app eventually, plus any additional stuff that they would bring. The potential's there. So that's where I'm at right now with the retro classics on Game Pass, and specifically running on my Xbox. But if you have a PC, you can do it there as well. And I think that there is a lot of potential here. I got to be honest with you. I found myself getting very competitive when it comes to those challenges, especially, classic games that I know really well from my childhood. I was when I got that notification that the guy, knocked me off my hero challenge, I was like, oh man, I got to get back in there and try to beat him. So, like I said, that's very addictive. But anyways, guys, that's a quick little video from me on retro classics. And so I'd love to know if you were checking it out and if you are landing on the leaderboards. Put your comment down below. Tell me what your score is on Hero, and I'll see if I can beat it. Probably won't be able to, though, but, I'll try. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.